Hey guys, so the keyboard I'll be covering today is one that just breaks the market, and it's the Neo65 by Qwertykeys. Just a note, they did send me this prototype unit to review, and like all of my reviews, they are unpaid. I will go over its specs and features as well as give my opinions, compliment areas that deserve it, and also point out flaws that need work with constructive feedback. So there is really just one reason and one reason alone why I said the Neo65 broke the market, and it's purely because of the price point. The starting price point for the lowest configuration is $80. But let me tell you what you get in the kit. So for $80, it's actually a plateless solder PCB, and it also comes with a brass weight. Let that sink in for a bit. That is a full metal custom keyboard for $80, and that's a steal. So I don't know how or what QK is doing to get the price and the cost that low, but I can tell that if they keep dishing out products like this, they're going to put their competitors in a corner. But is it good though? Let's dive in. Just a quick side note, Qwertykeys does have a build guide on their website, which I used when assembling the Neo65, and I think they did a pretty good job, so you can just follow those steps as they are pretty straightforward. Alright, let's jump into it. The Neo65 carry case is well made, it's nice and thick with plenty of protection, and it's got a bunch of different compartments for storing the hardware, plates, PCB, and the keyboard itself. So in the review package that I got, I requested specifics, and here is what they sent me. A red Neo65 with an M golden shiny brass weight, an aluminum plate and a palm plate, and a hot swap PCB so I can easily swap out different configurations for multiple sound tests. The rest of the hardware should be the same for everyone, which includes the necessary screws, some silicone mounting gaskets, some dampening foam and PE foam, an O-ring, FPC ribbon cables for the daughter board connection, some rubber feet with 2 different colors, a keycap puller, a switch puller, screwdrivers, and a USB-C cable. Now, if you order a tri-mode PCB like I did here, then you'll also receive a 2.4 GHz dongle. The tri-mode PCB basically allows you to switch between the 3 following connectivity options: hardwired, Bluetooth, and 2.4 GHz wireless. As for the plates, you'll have 5 options: palm, PC, FR4, carbon fiber, and aluminum. Now, I requested all of the plates because for those who have watched my past keyboard videos, I try to do sound tests on every plate option for a keyboard that is available. However, the QK team was not able to send me all of them due to the shipping weight and packing limitations. But that's okay because they allowed me 2 choices and I ended up picking palm and aluminum. Because in my experiences with past keyboards, softer plates like PC and palm tend to be very similar, while FR4, carbon fiber, and aluminum tend to be closer together in terms of sound and feel. So, which is why I'm pretty confident that with my 2 choices of the plates, I'm able to produce a better contrast in the test results, which we will see later. So let's take a look at the build quality. So far in my unit, the anodizing does look pretty consistent, minus 2 hook marks on the inside of the keyboard, which is fine, because that's necessary in the anodizing process and you won't be able to see it once it's built. I did, however, discover 2 line scratches on my shiny brass weight upon opening, and I do hope this won't be an issue for everyone else. Now, the first thing I'm going to do really quick is install the rubber feet onto the bottom of the keyboard to get this out of the way. You'll have 2 on the main frame of the case and 2 on the bottom weight itself. Now, you also want to unscrew and remove the weight for the next step, which is testing the PCB. And I will say that this process is only somewhat slightly more challenging than some other custom keyboards if you've never messed around with the FPC or ribbon cables before. When connecting the PCB to the daughter board, you want to gently pull up the lift gate to unlock the connector so that you can slide the ribbon into it. Then you'll just simply press the liftgate back down to secure and lock it into place. The FPC ribbon cable is a lot more delicate than something like connecting a JST cable, which I believe is more common, so you'll want to be careful and do it slow. And then plug in your USB-C cable for power so we can test it. At the same time, you also want to make sure you lay the bottom side of the PCB facing up so that you can use your tweezers to test all the switch sockets. Like many custom keyboards, the Neo65 is compatible with QMK and VIA, and VIA is what I use to check the PCB. Once you have confirmed that the PCB is fully functional and there are no issues, we can now disconnect it from the daughter board and move on to the next phase. And if you get a tri-mode PCB, there will be 2 2200 mAh batteries installed inside of the keyboard case. Those without tri-mode PCB will just have fillers in these compartments. There is also a small onboard switch on the PCB you'll have to turn on for the battery-powered orders, as this is needed to activate any wireless connections. The next phase would be building onto your PCB. Like many keyboards out there, plate foams and PE foams are optional, which alters the sound of typing depending on what you like. In my build, I chose only to use the PE foam for the marbly sound. If you want just a slightly more muted and dampened sound, you can use the plate foam, which would stack on top of the PE foam, and or the case foam that would go underneath the PCB. Now with the PE foam, they did instruct to cut out bits of it, particularly where your stabilizers would go. I asked QK why these aren't pre-cut, and the answer is because their PCB supports different layouts and the PE foam needs to be cut differently. For example, if you choose split backspace and split left shift, or ANSI versus ISO. Continuing with the build, I used Owl Lab stabilizers, which are lubed, and also going with stock Zaku switches for the sound test. To be honest, I've had these Zaku switches in my drawer for a very long time, but this is the first time I'm actually using them and they are great. As for the mounting system, you'll get silicone gaskets which provide a softer typing experience as you'll get some bounce from it, and the O-ring mount which will provide a stiffer typing experience. And there's no difference to the sound profile, it's just feel. I personally went with the gaskets in my build here. If you use the gasket mount, make sure the nipple is facing down. By the way, the O-ring mount does not support screw-in stabs, so QK will be providing clip-in stabs for free in the final production unit. Next thing you'll do is drop the PCB into the case. Connect the FPC cable to the daughter board, which you'll route through the pass-through cutout in the case. At the same time, when you flip the entire board over, you'll have to brace the batteries with one hand, and I will say the whole process of connecting to the daughter board from beginning to end is a bit of a nuance for the Neo65. Now drop in the keycaps and you should be all done. Now if you have the tri-mode PCB, you can switch between wired, Bluetooth, and 2.4Gs by holding the function key and hitting tab. QKey also has instructions on pairing Bluetooth mode as well as some shortcuts for RGB controls on their build guide. Alright, now let's jump into the sound test. So keep in mind, like every sound test that you hear on YouTube, take it with a grain of salt, as viewing, listening, and recording from different devices can vary. The Mr. Suit and QK65 were only used to provide a range of sound profiles to see where the Neo65 sits, not really for any one-on-one comparisons because they are all built differently with different switches and foam versus no foam. Alright, so now I want to go over the sound test. So the first point I want to go over is the aluminum versus the palm plate. So I'm not sure if you guys can pick up the difference or can hear it, but I'm going to give you my commentaries in person, in real life, what I hear, firsthand. And the aluminum sounds way better. Just short summary, straight up. The aluminum sounds crispier, it sounds sharper, it sounds slightly more full. That's the best way I can put it. And the next thing I want to talk about are the Zaku switches, in this keyboard at least. So I've never used the Zaku switches. I've only heard good things about them. I think that they feel smooth in stock form even, and they sound like one of my favorite long pole switches, which are the tungsten switches from Owl Lab, which is why I chose them. But I will say that overall, the sound that I got from this build is not my favorite. Now, I'm not saying that the Zaku switches are bad or the Neo65 is bad. I'm saying that this combination that I had picked, the Zaku switches in the Neo65, was not my favorite, and that's all it is. The sound profile on my build here sounds very lean. It's like, it sounds almost empty. It's also too clacky and high pitched for me. If you guys remember the sound test of the comparison with the Mr. Suit and the QK65, the QK65 was also made pretty bare too. Like, my friend put that together. There's no foam in it. It's just lube switches and lube stabilizers. That's it. And it sounds way better already. But like I said, it could be just the combination of the switches in this keyboard. Maybe if I use different switches, it might sound very similar. It might sound thockier. It might sound marblier. And this thing even has the PE foam in there, but just not using any of the case foam or the plate foam. So what about build quality? Just to close this out, I think the build quality for 80 bucks is phenomenal. The only nuance that I had was really the connecting the daughter board to the PCB. That whole process was just, it wasn't the best, but it's bearable. That's it. But honestly, for 80 bucks, like, this is really hard to beat. Build quality, the anodizing, the surface finish, it's really good. The weight on it, getting a brass weight for 80 bucks, it's really hard to beat. So overall, I'd say if you're into a 65% keyboard, this is probably a good one to look at. Okay, so that's all I have about the Neo65. Let me know what your thoughts and comments are. Is this something that you would want to pick up? Let me know. All right, so thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.